The opinions expressed are those of the host. The material is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute investment advice, and it is not intended as an endorsement for any specific investment. Visit crestmontpw.com for more details.
This is Sam McGee with the Ascent, brought to you by Crestmont Private Wealth. We have offices in Houston, Texas, and Boerne, Texas. One Riverway in Houston and 604 South Main in the historic district of Boerne. Today, we are kicking off a two-part series, and we are talking about the bookends of your financial life. So think about it like this. Part one is about the financial journey as you're learning about finances, as you're going through school and then entering the workforce. And then part two is near the tail end of your financial life, meaning when you start playing bridge and you're older and your activities may be a little bit less and there's other concerns. So why would this matter to you? The reason it matters to you is because you either have gone through that phase and you're going to go to that last part of life, or you are a parent, or you are a grandparent, or you're the child of aging parents. These things matter. We are going to be talking about two different parts. Today, we're going to focus on what we call base camp and trailhead. Those are the early stages of your financial journey and how Crestmont Private Wealth works with those individuals and what that looks like. The part two series, which will come on next week, is about legacy, aging parents, and the issues surrounding end of life and your assets. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. I recently went out to a conference, and there was some things that I learned out there that I thought were really interesting. There was a slide that went up during this conference that was really designed for people in my industry, those that advise families on their finances. And there was a slide that went up, and it talked about the different stages of life and the concerns that those individuals have. So we're going to start with that. So in early adulthood, one of the things that people worry about is, do I have the ability to earn enough money? Can I make ends meet? Am I going to have surplus income and be able to save for my future? Do I have the discipline and the wherewithal to save for the challenges that are going to come up? And then as you enter into the parenting phase, a lot of people think about, am I going to be able to take care of my kids today and in the future, whether it's saving for college or just paying the astronomical cost associated with raising children? And then there's obviously other phases of life like midlife and retirement, and that will be in the second part. But today we're going to focus on base camp and trailhead. Base camp we refer to as being still in the education phase. So if you're still in college or high school, we call that base camp. We actually have a place within Crestmont Private Wealth where we actually manage accounts for people in this stage of life. Now, it may be a college funding account. It may be an UTMA or UGMA account, which is basically an account where the minor receives gifts from their children or grandparents, and it's managed for them until they reach what's called the age of majority. And then we also work with clients at the trailhead, which is really just starting out your career and getting your first job, and maybe you're buying a house, and maybe you're getting married, and just getting your financial life going. We're going to talk about a few kind of interesting pieces with this. So one of the first things that I want to bring up, and this is sourced from the U.S. Census Bureau, so this is factual information. I wonder if you know how many young adults are living with parents percentage-wise. Age 18 to 34. So they consider young adults to be age 18 to 34. How many would you think, percentage-wise, of young adults are living with their parents today? Answer is, up through 2022, just shy of 33%. Lexi, what did you guess?
I guess 38%.
Okay, that's not bad. Pretty good. So 33%. However, what is interesting about this is that the sharp increase over time really got going in about 2004. Now, I haven't studied this. I don't know why this is, but what we do see is that more young adults are living with parents that are at the trailhead. They're getting their first job. Maybe they don't have their first job. Maybe that's why they're living with parents. So why would this matter from a financial planning perspective? Gosh, if you're the parent of those adult children, you're worried about, hey, can I properly care for my children financially and otherwise? If you're in that early adulthood, do I have the ability to earn? Do I have the discipline to save in the future? Obviously, if you're living at home, maybe it's for a reason. You're either employed and you're trying to save money, or you're not employed and you're trying to find a job. And then as you enter midlife, so maybe this is the parents, the concern becomes typically, will I have the funds and the health? Notice I say and the health to retire well. So very interesting topic. As we enter into a phase in this country where more and more adults are living at home, it changes the way you have to financially plan. So if you're a parent and you're listening to this, and maybe you have kids in high school or junior high, you're thinking, oh, you know what? My kids, they're going to go to a 4-year college, and after a 4-year college, they're going to go get a job, then they're going to get married, and they're going to do this. No. Reality is 1 out of every 3 children are going to end up living with you in early adulthood. So if you have 2 kids, your odds are more in favor that you're going to have 1 kid living with you 18 to 34.
I did that.
Yeah. So I'm sitting here with Lexi, and she's sitting here nodding as we talk about this show. And tell us what you did.
Yeah, I stayed at home. I stayed there until I was 23. What I did was I did community college first. I was lucky enough to have a full ride for community college. So got my AA for free, but also stayed home so I can save up money, and worked 3 jobs, and I saved up for my bachelor's and did my bachelor's online and lived at home and was debt free when I got my bachelor's degree.
Love that. And so the interpretation of that statistic I just gave, it's so interesting. Some listeners right now are thinking, oh gosh, kids staying at home, they just want to, live off mom and dad. No. Mm-hmm. So here's a great example of a really smart decision that you made in order to prepare yourself for a financial future. So I think this is just an interesting demographic to bring up. Now, the reason I bring it up is because advice should be meeting you where you are. So how does Crestmont do that? I'm going to share a little bit of insight into how Crestmont works with families. So we do something called family billing. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody in the family gets a pro rata share of a bill for advice at Crestmont Private Wealth. No, very different. We have innovated something here where clients of our firm that either have elderly parents or aging parents, or they have children who are either young adults or they're at base camp and they're still going through the education system, we can actually provide a more effective and efficient way to deliver, in our opinion, advice to the entire family. Because ideally, you would like to be able to pick up some savings if your parents or your kids are clients of a firm. So we do something called family billing. Now, what that looks like is we have a fee schedule, which you can find through our website. And that fee schedule is based off the assets that we manage for each generation. We have, for example, the Smith family. Maybe the Smith family has 2 aging parents, and then you have the adult working parents who are not retired yet, and then you have kids of those adult parents. One is in college, one just graduated from college and has their first job. So in the Smith family example, and this is fictitious, you would have all 6 members under the same consolidated fee schedule so they can reach a better effective rate collectively. They each pay their own way, but collectively, they are going to receive a lower effective rate than if they were treated independently. Now, I think the piece that is interesting about this is, in the wealth management context, I see this all the time, that there are advisors and firms out there, many good ones, but many that just go after the high net worth only and ignore the kids or maybe the elderly parents. What are your concerns? Going back to the concerns at the very beginning of this show, and we don't talk about the elderly parents yet, that's in part 2, but am I going to be able to properly care for my children today and tomorrow? One way that can be done is by having a relationship with a firm that is going to take in your kids as clients as they go from school to first job to second job and so forth. By having that continuity and having that type of advice in a cost-effective way, you're getting little tiny bits and pieces of education down to your kids. So that way, when you're not around, they know how to properly manage their own finances. So back to some of the concerns that we hear about. Let's talk about that for a second. When you talk about millennials, Gen Y, so age, call it 24 to 44, and you talk about Gen X and baby boomers, the difference in concerns is vastly different as it relates to their finances. A lot of millennials are more interested in kind of regular instant feedback, making sure that they're doing things right, validation, making sure, hey, am I doing the right things? I don't want to make any big mistakes, but am I doing the right things today to get to where I need to be? Whereas the baby boomers typically love statistics. They love history. They love knowing, hey, how have things gone? And the millennials that I know, not so interested in that, not really. And so how you deliver advice matters. So to be able to provide this family concept of wealth management, you have to have advisors that can speak to each generation. At Crestmont Private Wealth, we have 3 CFPs, and they cater to the different stages of the financial life. Trailhead, Base Camp, Ascent, and Summit, all very different. So as we talk about Base Camp and Trailhead, there are so many things to contend with, because if you're listening to this and you were growing up in the 80s, it was a lot different financially than it is today growing up. Real estate cost a lot more. College cost a lot more. Price of food has inflated. Just everything is completely different. And generationally, those people think differently. So the advice should be different. Now, at Crestmont Private Wealth, we deliver fiduciary advice across the spectrum of the life cycle. But we also want to meet you where you are and be able to understand what you're going through, understand how to deliver advice that is tailored to you individually, but then also understand that each generation thinks a little bit differently. Today we talked about Base Camp and the Trailhead. If you would like to talk about this further, please reach out to us. We'd love to hear from you. We work with high net worth and high income families. We are in Boerne and Houston, Texas, but we also work with clients all over the United States. You can reach us at info@crestmontpw.com. Next week, we will talk about the older generation, the Summit. Hope you have a great weekend, and God bless.